The protest march by the Cameroon Renaissance Movement is slighted in most parts of the country. Cameroonians in their majority go about their daily activities, while a number of paraders in Douala are overwhelmed by security officers. Political parties and traditional rulers have less than 5 hours to submit their list of candidates for the December 6 regional election. At Elections Cameroon branches, the final queues are being attended to. Showcasing the quality of public service to the population, the 9th edition of the Government Action Fair goes underway in Yaoundé with some 150 exhibitors expected in the 3-day show. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Those were the headlines of the 7:30 News.
Each of us must comply with the measures that have been taken.
The 7:30 News tonight begins with the comparative calm and serenity that reigned in the nation's capital in spite of the September 22 protest planned by the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. In major roundabouts, there was a strong presence of forces of law and order, while in markets like Mokolo and Fundi, traders and buyers exchanged in business. Emmanuel Avenue combed the town of Yaoundé and reports on how it fared today.
The bright sky lights up the city of Yaoundé on this 22nd day of September as inhabitants remain focused on what puts food on their table. At the Mokolo and Fundi markets, sellers scout for buyers who are crisscrossing the reputed business areas for purchases. The city is busy. Roadside vendors are on duty and hungry passers-by have what to feed on. Taxi drivers as well as commercial motorcycle riders on their part shuttle city dwellers around town.
No uniformed person has disturbed us. They are doing their job. Work is okay.
The difference would certainly be the law enforcement officers spotted here and there. They are on the lookout should any disorder be staged. Public administrations are delivering everyday services to the many users calling around.
I came to put my document in ministry. I'm looking for the stamp to put in my application that I write. Things are normal.
Nothing seems to perturb work in different ministries. After all, it is a Tuesday, a working day in Cameroon.
It's a regular day for me. My collaborators are in the office.
Yaoundé is calm, its inhabitants conscious of what should be done, and life continues.
In the economic capital, the neighborhoods of Ndokoti and Ange Raphael witnessed a number of persons braving the odds to march. They were quickly dispersed by the security forces who were out to maintain peace. However, the majority of inhabitants of Douala stayed indoors and kept their businesses closed to avoid manipulation. Veronica Benyala has the details.
This Tuesday morning in Douala had the atmosphere and attitude of a public holiday. The usual traffic rush hour to work, characterized by inhabitants hustling and bustling their way on the streets, was absent. Very few taxis were out on the road and only a few workers ventured out. Many were holding their breath as police and gendarmerie anti-riot vehicles paraded the streets to ensure security. At about 10 a.m., a few protesters gathered at the Ndokoti roundabout and were quickly dispersed by police water tanks. At the same time, a similar grouping was reported around Ange Raphael. Although many roadside vendors opted not to open their businesses, markets remained open. There has been relative timidity in economic activities as a result of fear on the part of the population. However, normal activity is gradually gaining steam in the city of Douala. For now, Douala is calm and getting back to normal.
The call for manifestation was ignored by the inhabitants of the West region, who chose to preserve the peace and unity of Cameroon. Taxis and commercial motorbikes plied the roads normally, economic activities went on unperturbed, and civil servants carried on with their routine. Gu Henry Tesambe reports.
It was business as usual in the city of Bafoussam this Tuesday, September the 22nd, 2020. Contrary to information circulating on the social media that there was a protest march at the Big Mob market, inhabitants of the neighborhood could be seen going about their daily activities. Vendors of poultry products, food items, commercial bike riders, petty traders, among others, and buyers were spotted at the market. Other neighborhoods in the city of Bafoussam, like the Central Market, popularly known as Marché A, Marché B, the Auberge, Total, and the Carrefour roundabouts, had the usual hustle and bustle. The population of Bafoussam, like elsewhere in the West region, by press time, had not respected the call for an uprising or a protest march by the leader of the CRM party. This is the Ndiandam coach station, one of the gateways into the city of Bafoussam. It is characterized by the usual hustle and the bustle in the city. Gu Henry in Bafoussam.
In the northwest and southwest regions, the invitation to take to the streets to challenge state institutions was shunned. To a large extent, the inhabitants, preoccupied with the back-to-school preparation, lauded administrative authorities for ensuring that peace prevails. Clarice Aritakam reviews today's events in both regions.
Calm streets, businesses closed, little movement in some parts and not at all in others. This is Bamenda on September 22, 2020. It was what has become the usual security presence which greeted the few inhabitants who stepped out of their homes while most preferred to stay indoors. The call to take to the streets in protest against state institutions was not heeded. In some places, though, economic activities went on uninterrupted. Over in Boya, southwest region, the no to any uprising was said with inaction as the absence of protesters on the streets indicated. The atmosphere was that of inhabitants busy with their activities. Markets were crowded and administrative structures open to users in need of their services. Authorities explained that necessary measures had been put in place to guarantee the safety of goods and persons. Locals, for their part, said giving into pressure from any source to be part of any unruly behavior will make an already bad situation even worse and is therefore uncalled for. In both regions, with the regional elections to look forward to, branch offices of Elections Cameroon remained open, waiting to receive lists of candidates to be deposited at divisional delegations. They have just a few hours before the deadline is reached.
Out of the country, Cameroon's diaspora in some parts of Europe and the United States of America refused to be part of the undemocratic march. In Paris, London and Washington, D.C., they elected for responsible actions and focused their reflections on how to impact the development of their country, Cameroon. Ebenezer Akanga summarizes the actions in this report.
These are images of Paris by 10 a.m. this Tuesday, 22nd of September 2020. The doors of the Cameroon Embassy building were closed for precautionary reasons, but users were being served from outside. The ambassador of Cameroon to France was on seat and performing his duties. There was calm around the embassy premises. The same atmosphere of calm prevailed around the premises of the Cameroon Embassy in the United States of America in Washington this Tuesday morning. The flag of Cameroon floated proudly over the embassy.
To lay on the line the peace and unity of Cameroon. With us is the editorialist, Central Director for Radio, Dr. George Wane. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Esther. Thanks for having me.
What's your reading of today's happening? You say the day is over?
Yes, I should say that now the day is over and that shadows of the evening still across the sky. That was a nursery rhyme to sound the end of the day by schoolboys and girls ardent to go home. Yes, beautiful memories, Esther. But today was no nursery rhyme. It was an adult staccato rhythm with an incoherent display of cowardice, laughed at even by children. This day, the 22nd of September 2020, is now, of course, over. Now, the planned insurrection to oust President Paul Biya has witnessed complete failure. Paul Biya, as you know, is still at Itudi. The MRC leader is anywhere to be found. Yesterday, I told you, Esther, that today was going to be the scenario today. The apocalypse promised President Paul Biya by an insensate leadership of the MRC party has finally turned out to be the apocalypse of a kleptomaniac leader of a political party who finally can be rightfully considered as a pathological liar, one who jolly knows he did not win the 2018 presidential elections, but who has consistently lied about his victory to the unfortunate extent that he ended up believing in his own lies alongside other followers. Now, in spite of a few episodic and spotted demonstrations here and there, you said that in your news, of some bellicose supporters of this political party, the rest of the country was alive and bustling as usual. People went about their activities unperturbed, in calm and serenity. It seems like the MRC leadership, Esther, seems to have been chasing the ghost of President Paul Biya, whom that party killed some months back on Facebook.
And so what lessons do we draw from this?
Yes, I think that the lessons to be drawn from the nose-bruising fall and epileptic collapse of the MRC leadership are many. One, that the MRC has lied to Cameroonians and the international community about their victory in the 2018 presidential elections, because if they did win the elections as they claim, they wouldn't have had less than 1% of the population coming out today to protest and pretend to oust the president, as was the case. Two, that President Paul Biya actually won the elections by an overwhelming majority, and that explains why over 99% of Cameroonians went about their activities undisturbed and unconcerned by the activities of the few MRC supporters. Three, Esther, that the MRC leadership continues to revel in lies-telling and forgery. This is why, and this is serious, on the official Facebook page of the MRC leader today, they posted the peaceful march in Bamenda on the 22nd of September 2017, claiming it was today. Now, if they have not brought down that post yet, anybody can check that out. Four, that the Cameroonian people love their president and love peace, which is the sine qua non for any development to take place in our country. Five, that the people of Cameroon are mature in general behavior, focused, emotionally stable, and refuse to succumb to manipulation from a man whose ambition to be president is inordinate and devilish and requires a psychological examination. Six, that this is the political apocalypse of the MRC party, which the president rightfully described some months back as petit parti politique. Now, that today could be considered the second round of the 2018 presidential elections, once again won by President Paul Biya with an even far greater score than it was in 2018. Finally, and this is not exhaustive, Esther, that the MRC leadership ought to dissolve their party and its leader resign from politics, because in the end, it has been a storm in a teaspoon.
And so what do you predict for the MRC party?
Yeah, what I predict the MRC party is that maybe I should begin with what next for the government and the citizens who come to MRC. First, that life goes on normally. Second, that the government must keep watch and be vigilant, that our security and defense forces must continue to be very professional as they were today, that voters should get ready for the regional elections, that President Paul Biya expedites his development objectives, assured of the backing of Cameroonians. And now, Esther, to the MRC and its leadership, under normal circumstances, the leaders of this party should recollect and rethink their strategy by at least attempting to politically be correct and not take Cameroonians for granted anymore. But since the party leadership, as you know, is a group of stubborn, bellicose, and unrepentant people with an obsession to power, they will certainly devise other unorthodox means of fueling trouble and crying foul at the same time. Esther, an obsession to power, like any obsession, is dangerous. Let me quote Norman Mailer, who puts it that obsession is the single most wasteful human activity. Because of an obsession, you keep coming back and back and back to the same question and never get an answer. I'm ending the quote.
Thanks very much, George Wane, for your reading of today's happening. The planned protest from a political party not mandated by the population had little chances of having a strong following, given the majority of Cameroonians, their love for fatherland, and their denial to be influenced for personal gains. Ebenezer Akanga reports that the success of the move was far-fetched.
The insurrection plan of Maurice Kamto was doomed to fail. For one thing, Cameroonians in their overwhelming majority did not adhere to the diabolic plan. And they made it very clear.
It is clearly to obtain the departure of President Paul Biya. And it is not possible.
CPDM does not like disorder. We like peace for our country.
If he doesn't want to go to election, nobody will come and tell him to go by force. But we, militants of CPDM and our allied parties, we will all go for this election.
Even the road transport and commercial motorbike sectors, which are often easily infiltrated and manipulated, refused to join in the plan to plunge the country into disorder.
We of the Transport Union have gathered here today to say no to any disorder in our country.
Women and youths completely turned their backs to the insurrection call.
It will be of no use letting your children to go out rioting, causing disorder, that at the end of the day, you as a parent, you as a mother, you want to bear the peace.
With all of these, it was clear that the insurrection plan was going to fail. Cameroonians have opted for peace and preservation of republican institutions.
On to one of our top stories. In barely 4 hours, the submission of lists of candidates for the December 6th regional election will end. According to the Electoral Code, only the lists submitted within 15 days after the convening of the electoral colleges are eligible. Beatrice Law Samba is at the Lekam branch of Fundi in the Central region with details of the last submissions. Hello, Beatrice. How's the exercise going on there?
Good evening, Esther. Well, the submission of files for candidates vying for the regional elections come December 6 is well on course here at the Elekam branch of the Fundi division. It is a little at the Nouvelle Route Omisport. And it is well on course here. About 30 minutes ago, just before the rain came down, we had the Cameroon Democratic Front, the CDF, which came in here to drop its file to the commission at work here. The commission at work right behind me here has been collecting files from political parties and traditional rulers. We had the CPDM, which came in quite early, at the early hours of the morning. That's at a little after 9 o'clock, and deposited these files of candidates. And they were closely followed by two other colleges of traditional rulers. Two lists of traditional rulers were dropped in the course of the day. And the commission stays at work this cold night, this rainy night, I would say. They leave their doors open for anyone who wants to drop their list, and this is going to be a last chance for those who want to grab one of the 9 seats that the Fundi division has reserved for the regional council of the Central region. And so it's going to be on and on all night. It's going to be a long night until midnight, when the deadline expires for the deposit of lists of candidates for the Fundi division. So we'll be keeping you updated. Back to you.
Thanks, Beatrice Law Samba, for that outing. In Fundi division, just like in the Lekam branches in the Damawa region, political parties have been presenting their documents, which are scrupulously checked by the officials. Apart from the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement and the National Union for Democracy and Progress, who will be competing, traditional rulers are also compiling their aspirants. Silas Nkwine tells us more.
The Vina Divisional Branch of Elections Cameroon in Gaoundéré was this Tuesday once again busy, as candidates interested in running for the upcoming regional elections were eager to respect the deadline for the submission of candidatures. The Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, the ruling CPDM leaders led by their nomination committee chairman Abbas Sadou, were among the first to respond after traditional rulers on Monday. The NUDP party leaders, on their part, while depositing their nomination papers, said they spent the weekend verifying their documents. The atmosphere was same in the 4 other constituencies of the Adamawa region.
In the category of the representative of traditional rulers, so far we have received 6 nomination files. As for the category of the delegate of division, the CPDM have already submitted its nomination files. The NUDP has submitted its nomination files in the Vina and Mayobanyo constituency.
The list of potential voters, which includes 593 municipal councillors and 1,100 traditional rulers, are displayed at the various Elections Cameroon branches of the region.
In our other top story, the government of Cameroon is exhibiting its public services during a 3-day exhibition underway at the Multi-Purpose Sports Complex in Yaoundé. During the official launch of the Cameroon Government Exhibition Fair, SAGO, the Minister of Communication, René Mano Sadi, representing Prime Minister Joseph John Gute, underscored that will spur knowledge in the government office. Cynthia Saptala has the details.
In a quest to continuously provide visibility and understanding of public actions geared towards development, this year's edition stressed on the need to improve on the quality of services received by citizens.
There are so many things that we are doing in this country which are not known by our fellow citizens. And I think an opportunity like this, an initiative like this, which is an initiative of young people, young promoters, has to be sustained. People will discover many more achievements.
During the opening ceremony, the minister saluted the increase in participation with the involvement of the transport sector. The members of government were later given a tour of the different stands where the population is encouraged to take interest in the management of their affairs.
The government's action fair highlights the necessity for the private sector to work in synergy with the public sector to boost economic growth. Private companies and enterprises are at the exhibition to present their supplies to the public at the show, where access is free. Luma Slim Davies reports on how these companies accompany government in its mission.
Economic emergence by 2035 remains a priority for the Cameroon government. And for this to be realized, the private sector has a part to play in the various segments of the economy.
We have services that we offer to the government. For example, when government do organize conferences or seminars, we plan the event. The government cannot maybe have a venue. We provide the venue that is suitable for the people. During the conference now, we offer services like decorations, we offer catering service, the food that they're going to eat there.
The focus of the government and private sector collaboration is to build human assets to guarantee economic growth.
We are working hand to hand with the government. An example where we were preparing for the CHAN 2020, we were the one that was supposed to clean the stadium that were supposed to hold the championship. And now in terms of back to school, we are trying to help the government in the term of hygiene and sanitation. We are going to make sure that all the toilets are clean on a daily basis.
The Government Action Fair, better known as SAGO, is certainly one platform that could help out in enterprises build-up and initiatives.
The ongoing showcase is an opportunity for Cameroon to unveil the number of development projects that have been brought to fruition in the last decade. A significant growth has been witnessed in sectors such as agro-industry, road infrastructure, energy, urban planning, and new technologies. Eve Famuso presents some of these projects.
Captivating in its beauty, Cameroon is striking for its undiscovered natural resources and government stability. While it's still a pipe dream to attain emergence, several development projects have either been completed or pending realization. Different sectors are breathing anew: agro-industry, road, port and airport infrastructure, energy, real estate and urban planning, mining industries and new technologies. Inclusive and Resilient Cities Development Project, launched 2017, will focus on improving access to infrastructure in poor urban communities and urban management itself. Solar energy, seeing the sun as wealth, the Bolloré Group strives for decentralized systems to bring electricity to villages where electricity access is costly. Decentralization is taking shape. Hydroelectric dams are set to solve the country's epileptic power supply.
In health news,
the wearing of face masks in public places will be mandatory until further notice.
In health news tonight, we talk about individual and collective immunity to the coronavirus. Recent research carried out by health experts proves that some persons tested positive for COVID-19 later on produce strong antibodies that prevents them from a reinfection. How possible is this, and does it differ from one society to the other? Baldwin Sama is at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center. He now provides clarifications. Hi, Baldwin.
Good evening to you, Esther Kima, and welcome. The question as to whether it is possible to have an individual immunity or collective immunity vis-a-vis the coronavirus receives a positive response from public health experts in the country who say that as research has been carried out and it can be proven that a person, for example, who was tested positive for COVID-19 and got recovered from the virus, his system has produced very strong antibodies, making it difficult for such an individual to get infected once more with the virus, or this person, making it difficult for such a person to infect another person. And talking about collective immunity, they cite examples where a group of persons, over 20 persons who were infected with the virus in a particular locality, they got recovered from the virus. It is impossible for them once more to get infected or to contaminate others. But all of these depend on each person's system, because there are persons whose bodies produce very strong antibodies, making it difficult for them, or making it so easy for them to resist the coronavirus. But the take-home message from public health experts is for Cameroonians to continue respecting all these barrier measures so as for them to be able to limit the spread of the coronavirus in Cameroon. Back to you, Esther Kima.
Thanks, Baldwin. Immunity can be collective or individual as far as coronavirus is concerned. The new school year is fast approaching, and guardians and parents are caught between the choices of schools for their offspring. A cross-section, however, opts for institutions with repute, popularly known, regardless of their academic output. Alice Mbe investigates on the modalities to be enrolled in such schools, which sometimes are not within the reach of the average Cameroonian.
At College Jean Tabi in Yaoundé, school authorities say to register a student, one must be successful in the competitive exams.
The 6th class, where all the students are to write a competitive entrance. In the rest of the classes, you need to write a test. If you are successful in this test, then you are recruited.
While at Lycée Technical at Tangana, the same registration procedure is carried out.
We are registering only students who have succeeded in the competitive exams into Premier Technique and into the second cycle.
In College Henri Vieta at Lonkak, things are not indifferent.
Registration depends on the number of students needed in a particular class. They will have to come along with photocopies of their birth certificates, report cards, and 2 passport-sized photographs.
For now, most private and government institutions have not started processing files of transfer cases as they wait on government's order to do so.
In sports, the playground of the 60,000-seater stadium in Olembe has been completely mapped and the lighting installed at the main field and its annex. The progress was applauded by the Minister of Sports and Physical Education, Professor Narcis Molekombi, today during an inspection visit, as we hear in this report by Romeo Kenye.
A demonstration of action on the green turf of the Olembe Sports Complex. The football pitch has been mapped out per FIFA norms. While the goalposts are set and await an official game, the presidential tribune of the 60,000 capacity seater stadium is being given a facelift. Major innovations lauded by Sport Minister Professor Narcis Molekombi and Central Regional Governor on an inspection tour.
The field has been transformed into a veritable playing ground, and we went inside the dressing room, and every place is almost ready. We just want to encourage them to work harder so we can meet the deadline.
In addition to the 8 lighting system installed in the 2 annex stadia, the columns of the athletics track have been numbered. There is equally a conspicuous presence of infrastructure for other sports disciplines like javelin and triple jump. The sport boss has said negotiations are on the way with officials of Magid Construction to make available the training fees during the Shan 2021. An imminent CAF inspection visit to the football facility is slated for next month.
And that will be all for this edition of the 7:30 News, in which you heard that the protest march by the Cameroon Renaissance Movement was slighted in most parts of the country. More news comes up at 8:30 p.m. with Romeo Chuse. I'll be back tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. God willing, stay tuned to the programs on the CRTV and continue to stay safe, for the coronavirus is real. Good night.
In this connection, we should avoid stigmatizing.
CRTV News, ici, toute l'info.